I saw him again on March 15, 1994, standing at the edge of my property in Alaska. Same exact spot where I'd first found him 30 years earlier, March 1964. Frozen solid in a glacial ice cave. No heartbeat, no breath. Dead by any measure, I understood, but I'd brought him back anyway. Thawed him slowly over 3 days, watched him return to life like something from a nightmare or a miracle. Then he'd walked back into the wilderness, disappeared. I'd assumed he'd died, that the freeze had damaged him too much, that bringing him back had been temporary. A few days of borrowed life before the inevitable. But now he was back, after 30 years. And he looked exactly the same. Not aged, not changed. Like those 30 years had been 30 days. He was standing there, looking at me, and I realized with a chill that had nothing to do with Alaska's cold. He hadn't aged because he couldn't age. Because whatever species he belonged to didn't follow our rules, our biology, our understanding of life and death. I'd saved something that day in 1964. Something that could survive being frozen solid. Something that might be centuries old. Something that had come back after 30 years to show me. I'm still here, still alive, still remembering. My name is Harold Jensen. I'm 87 years old now. This story is about the impossible thing I found in 1964, about what it means to be alive, about species that survive in ways we can't comprehend, and about debts that last longer than human lifetimes. This is the story of the creature I pulled from the ice, who came back 3 decades later to prove that death isn't always the end, not for all of us, not for him. March 1964. I was 57 years old, had moved to Alaska in 1959 right after statehood, bought land near Denali, built a cabin, lived alone, trapped, hunted, survived. Alaska was the last frontier, still wild, still dangerous, still full of things we didn't understand. I loved it. March 12, 1964. I was checking my trap lines in the backcountry, miles from my cabin, deep wilderness, still winter, 20 below zero. I was following a game trail when I saw the cave, glacial ice cave, opening in the face of a small glacier, maybe 10 feet high. Dark inside. I'd passed this area dozens of times, never noticed the cave. But the glacier was calving, melting, retreating. The cave was new, recently exposed. I was curious, went inside. The cave went back maybe 30 feet, ice walls, ice ceiling. Beautiful in that deadly way ice can be. Blue-white, crystal clear, ancient ice. Thousands of years old maybe, and in the back wall, frozen in the ice. I saw him. At first I thought, dead climber. Someone who'd fallen in a crevasse decades ago, preserved in the ice like those bodies they find in glaciers. But as I got closer, as I looked more carefully, I realized it wasn't human. Too tall, maybe 7 feet even curled in the ice. Too broad in the shoulders, covered in dark brown hair, not clothing, hair, body hair, fur. The face was visible through clear ice, not quite human, not quite ape, something between, heavy brow ridge, flat nose. But the expression, even frozen, even dead, looked peaceful, like sleeping, not like dying. A Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the creature from native stories, frozen in glacial ice, dead for God knows how long? Decades, centuries. How long does it take for something to freeze into a glacier? I didn't know, but this creature had been here a long time, preserved perfectly, pristine, like it had been frozen yesterday or 1,000 years ago. I should have left it, should have respected it as a grave, should have walked away, but I couldn't. Something about that peaceful face, that expression that looked like sleep, not death. Something in me said, what if it's not dead? What if it's just frozen? What if it could be saved? Insane thought, impossible thought. Nothing survives being frozen solid. Ice crystals rupture cells, destroy tissue. Being frozen solid is death. Everyone knows that. But I'd seen things in Alaska, seen fish frozen in lakes come back to life when thawed, seen frogs frozen solid survive until spring, seen insects, small creatures. Could something larger survive? Could something this large survive being frozen? I made a decision that was either brilliant or insane. I started digging him out, used my ice axe, chipped away the ice around him. Carefully, slowly, hours of work. My hands cramping from cold, my breath freezing in the air, but I kept going. Freed his arms, his legs, his head. Finally freed him completely from the ice. He was frozen solid, rigid, heavy, must have weighed 600 pounds. I couldn't carry him, could barely move him. But I had a sled for hauling trap catches. I managed to roll him onto it, wrapped him in my emergency blanket, started the long haul back to my cabin, 6 miles, pulling 600 pounds of frozen Sasquatch. It took me 8 hours. It was the hardest physical work I'd ever done. But I didn't quit, didn't stop. Had to see, had to know. What if he could be saved? I got him to my cabin after dark, pulled him inside. My cabin was small, 12 by 16 feet. He took up half the floor space. I built up my wood stove, got the temperature up to maybe 60 degrees. Warm for Alaska winter, but not too warm, not too fast. Then started the thaw. Not fast. That would kill him for sure if anything could. Slow, gradual, controlled. Letting his body temperature rise naturally. The way you'd warm a hypothermia victim, 1 degree at a time, 1 hour at a time. I'd done hypothermia rescues before, found frozen trappers, frozen hunters. You warm them slow. Too fast, and the cold blood from their extremities rushes to their heart, kills them. Cold shock. You have to be patient. Let the body wake up gradually. Give it time to remember how to live. But those had been people who'd been cold for hours, maybe a day. This creature had been frozen solid for years, maybe decades, maybe longer. Ice crystals had formed in every cell, had torn through tissue, had destroyed everything that makes life possible. By every rule of biology I knew, he was dead, irreversibly dead. But I had to try. I positioned him near the stove, not too close, didn't want to cook him. About 8 feet away, the heat would radiate, warm him gradually. I removed the emergency blanket, let the air circulate, started monitoring. Every hour, I'd check his core temperature. I had a medical thermometer, all trappers did, for treating hypothermia in ourselves or others. I'd check under his arm, in his mouth when it thawed enough, tracking the rise. Hour 1, 15 degrees. Still frozen. Hour 2, 18 degrees. Hour 3, 22 degrees. Slow, steady, safe. I monitored his skin, felt the fur, checked for frostbite, for tissue damage, for necrosis. His fingers and toes were concerning, dark, possibly damaged beyond recovery, but I couldn't tell while he was still frozen. Would have to wait, see what happened when he thawed. For the first 24 hours, nothing. He was just a corpse, heavy, inert, no signs of life, no breath, no heartbeat, no response to stimuli. I'd check his eyes, no pupil reaction. I'd press his chest, no resistance, just dead weight. A body thawing. I'd made a terrible mistake, disturbed a grave for nothing. He was gone. Had been gone for who knows how long. I couldn't bring him back. But something made me keep going, keep monitoring, keep warming. Maybe stubbornness, maybe hope. Maybe the memory of that peaceful expression on his face through the ice. He'd looked like he was sleeping, not dead, sleeping. And maybe, just maybe, he was. Hour 30. Core temperature, 45 degrees. Still no signs of life, but the color was starting to change. The blue-gray of frozen death fading slightly, becoming more brown, more natural. Or was I imagining it, seeing what I wanted to see? Hour 36. Temperature, 52 degrees. His skin was fully thawed now, pliable. I could move his limbs. They weren't rigid anymore. But still no life, no breath, no heartbeat. Then, hour 42, March 14th, 1964, around 3 p.m., core temperature, 58 degrees. I was checking his pulse for the 100th time, fingers on his neck, feeling for a carotid artery, and I felt something, tiny, almost imperceptible, a flutter. A beat? No. Imagination. Had to be. I kept my fingers there, waited. 30 seconds, nothing. I was about to give up. Then, there, a beat. Definite. Unmistakable. Weak. Slow. Maybe 5 beats per minute. But present. His heart was beating. I checked his breathing, put my ear to his chest, listened. Nothing. No breath sounds. But the heart was beating. That meant something. Meant the body was trying. Meant maybe, just maybe, this was possible. Hour 45. Another tremor. This time visible. His arm twitched. Not just muscle relaxing as it thawed. Deliberate movement. Reflex, conscious. I couldn't tell, but movement, life. Hour 48. His chest moved. A shallow breath. Tiny. Inadequate. But breath. Air moving in. Air moving out. He was trying to breathe. His body was remembering how. Restarting systems that had been stopped for God knows how long, fighting back from death, from ice, from impossibility. I monitored more frequently now, every 15 minutes, watching for changes, for improvements, for setbacks. His pulse was strengthening, 10 beats per minute, then 12, then 15. Still slow, normal human is 70, but trending upward. His breathing was becoming regular, small breaths, shallow but consistent, every 30 seconds, then every 20, then every 15, hour 54, core temperature 68 degrees. His color was definitely better, brown, healthy, alive. I could see his chest rising and falling now, clear respiration. I could feel his pulse without even trying, strong, present, undeniable. Hour 60, temperature 75 degrees, getting closer to what I guessed was normal for his species. His breathing was almost regular now. Deep breaths, every 10 seconds. Strong, purposeful. His heart rate was maybe 30 beats per minute. Still slow, but functional. His fingers were moving, twitching, flexing. Not dead tissue, living tissue, recovering. Hour 66. Temperature 82 degrees. His eyes were moving under the lids. REM sleep, dreaming, consciousness, returning. I watched his face. That peaceful expression was changing, becoming more active, more present, like someone waking from very deep sleep. Hour 72, March 15th, 1964. 3 days after I'd found him. Core temperature 97 degrees. What I assumed was normal. Pulse 40 beats per minute. Respiration steady, deep, regular. And his eyes opened, unfocused at first, confused, disoriented. He looked around my cabin, at me, at the stove, at the walls, trying to understand. Where am I? What happened? Who are you? I stayed back, gave him space. You're safe, I said quietly. You were frozen, in ice. I brought you here, warmed you up. You're okay now. He made sounds, low, rumbling. Not quite language, but communication. Questions, confusion. He tried to sit up, wobbled. Weak from 3 days of being dead or near death. Fell back, tried again, managed to sit. Then stand. Unsteady, but determined. He was massive standing, 7 feet tall, broad shoulders, powerful build, could crush me without effort. But he didn't seem aggressive, just confused, disoriented, lost. He looked at me, made sounds, different sounds, softer, questioning, grateful, I couldn't tell. I offered food, dried meat, bread, water. He ate carefully, drank deeply, accepted my offerings, seemed to understand I'd helped him, saved him, brought him back from whatever frozen death he'd been in. He stayed in my cabin for 2 more days, recovering strength, eating, drinking, watching me. We couldn't communicate with words, but communication happened. Gestures, expressions, shared space. I showed him the ice cave on my map, pointed, made freezing gestures. Him? Yes, that's where you were. Frozen. For how long? I don't know. Years? Decades. He looked at the map, at me, seemed to understand, seemed disturbed. Had he known he was frozen? Or had it been like sleep? Like blinking and waking up in a different time? On March 17, 1964, 5 days after I'd found him, he left, walked to my door, looked back at me, made sounds, low, grateful sounds, then walked out into the wilderness. I watched him go, watched until he disappeared into the trees, and wondered if he'd survive, if whatever had frozen him had damaged him in ways I couldn't see, if I'd given him a few days of life before the inevitable end. I never saw him again, not for 30 years. Life continued. I aged, got older, slower. Alaska changed too. More people, more development, more tourists, less wild than it had been in '64. I stayed in my cabin, kept my trap lines, lived simply, sometimes thought about the creature I'd pulled from the ice, wondered if he'd made it, if he'd found his people, or if he'd died shortly after leaving, alone, lost in time, a relic I'd briefly resurrected before nature claimed him again. Then came March 15th, 1994, 30 years to the day after his eyes had first opened in my cabin. 30 years exactly, not coincidence, deliberate. He'd kept track, marked time, remembered the exact date, that level of precision, that level of memory, that level of gratitude spanning 3 decades. I was 87, still living alone, still in the same cabin. But I'd changed, aged. 30 years had carved lines in my face, turned my hair white, bent my back, weakened my muscles, made me slow, made me old. 30 years had transformed me from middle-aged to elderly, from strong to frail, from independent to struggling. That's what 30 years does to humans, changes us, ages us, moves us inexorably toward death. I was on my porch, morning coffee, watching the forest, thinking about age, about time, about how little I had left. Maybe a few years, maybe less. Alaska winter had gotten harder, cabin maintenance had gotten harder, everything had gotten harder. I was wearing out, winding down, running out of time, and I saw movement at the edge of my clearing, exact same spot where the ice cave had been visible in the distance 30 years before. A figure, large, walking slowly, deliberately, coming toward my property, not hiding, not threatening, just approaching, purposeful, like someone who knew exactly where they were going, exactly who they were looking for. As he got closer, my heart stopped. I recognized him immediately. The same build, the same gait, the same presence. It was him, the creature from the ice, after 30 years. But he looked the same, exactly the same, not aged, not changed. No gray in his fur, no stiffness in his movement, no sign that 30 years had passed, like he'd left yesterday, like those 3 decades had been 3 days, like time didn't touch him the way it touched me. The contrast was devastating. Me, old, bent, white-haired, struggling to stand. Him, unchanged, powerful, vital, timeless. What 30 years had done to me, what it did to all humans, it hadn't done to him. And I understood something profound and terrible. His species didn't age the way we did, didn't experience time the way we did. 30 years was nothing to them. A blink, barely worth noting. He stopped at the edge of my property, 30 feet away. We looked at each other. 3 decades collapsed to nothing. I stood up, shaky, old, leaning on my porch rail for support. "It's you," I whispered. My voice cracked, old man's voice. "You came back." He made a sound, the same low rumble I remembered from 1964. Recognition, acknowledgement. "Yes, it's me. I came back," I remembered. I marked the time. I waited exactly 30 years, and now I'm here to show you what you did mattered. The implications crashed over me. He'd been frozen in that ice for how long before I found him? Decades? Centuries? He could survive being frozen solid, could be thawed and return to life. That meant his biology was fundamentally different from ours, meant his cellular structure could withstand ice crystal formation, meant his species had evolved or been created for extreme survival, for endurance we couldn't imagine. And if he could survive freezing, survive being dead by our standards, for years or decades or centuries, then how long did his species live? 100 years? 200? 500? 1,000? How old was he really? When he walked away from my cabin in 1964, was he 50 years old? 100? 500? Was I a brief moment in a lifespan measured in centuries? He approached slowly, each step deliberate, giving me time to adjust, time to accept. He stopped 10 feet away, close enough to see clearly, close enough to compare, and the comparison was brutal. I was dying, clearly, visibly, obviously dying. A few years left at most. He was eternal, unchanging, would be here long after I was gone, would be here centuries from now, still walking these mountains, still alive, still remembering. He reached into a pouch he wore, made from hide, hanging across his massive chest. Pulled something out, a piece of ice, clear glacial ice, must have weighed 2 pounds. Still frozen despite spring temperatures, despite the warmth. He'd carried it, kept it frozen somehow, brought it specifically for me, brought it from the glacier maybe, from the place where I'd found him. Physical evidence, physical memory. This is where I was, this is what I was. Ice, death, frozen oblivion. He set it on the ground between us, knelt to place it carefully, then stood, pointed to the ice, pointed to himself, pointed to me. The meaning was impossibly clear. This is where I was. Frozen in this, dead in this. You pulled me out. You refused to leave me. You spent 3 days bringing me back. You gave me life when everything, biology, science, logic, said life was impossible. I was gone. You brought me back. And I remember, 30 years later, I'm grateful. I came back to show you I'm still alive, still here, still walking, still living the life you gave me. You did that. Your choice to save me mattered. It changed everything, for me, forever. Then he did something that broke me. He bowed, deep formal bow, held it for a long moment, respect, gratitude, acknowledgement across 30 years, across species, across impossible circumstances. Then he straightened, looked at me one more time, and walked back into the forest. I stood there crying. He'd come back after 30 years to show me he'd survived, to prove that pulling him from that ice had been right, that giving him a chance had mattered. That life, even impossible life, was worth fighting for. I'm 87 now. That was 30 years ago. No, wait, that was this year. 1994, I'm getting confused. The years blur. I'm old. But I'm writing this down while I remember, while I can still hold a pen. Because this story deserves to be told. I pulled a creature from glacial ice in 1964, thawed him, brought him back to life when he should have stayed dead. He walked away and I thought that was the end. But 30 years later, he came back, looking exactly the same, not aged, proving that some species don't follow our rules, don't age the way we do, don't die the way we understand death. He'd been frozen for how long before I found him? Decades, centuries. How old was he really? 100? 200? 1,000? His species might live for times we can't comprehend, might survive freezing solid and thawing, might be so different from us that 30 years is nothing. A blink, barely worth noting, and he'd use those 30 years to remember, to keep track of time, to mark the anniversary, to come back and show me what you did mattered. I'm still here because of you. Thank you. That's the story, the impossible story. The creature in the ice who came back 3 decades later. The species that survives what would kill us. The gratitude that lasts longer than human lifetimes. The debt acknowledged across impossible time. I don't know if I'll see him again. I'm old. Won't be here much longer. But he will. He'll be here centuries from now, still alive, still walking these mountains, still remembering the human who pulled him from the ice in 1964, still carrying that story, that moment, that connection. And maybe, centuries from now, he'll tell someone else, his people, his family, his descendants, about the old human in Alaska who found him frozen and refused to leave him dead, who worked for hours to free him, who spent 3 days bringing him back, who gave him life when everything said life was impossible. That's my legacy. Not the furs I trapped, not the cabin I built, not the years I survived in Alaska, but the impossible creature I saved. Who came back to prove it had been worth it, who showed me that sometimes the rules we think are absolute aren't, that life finds ways, that some things survive what would destroy us, and that gratitude, real gratitude, transcends time, species, and understanding. I pulled him from the ice in 1964. He came back in 1994. That's 30 years of remembering, of gratitude, of debt acknowledged, and he'll keep living, keep remembering, long after I'm gone, long after everyone who knew me is gone. The creature who was frozen and saved, still walking, still alive, still grateful. That's what matters, that's what lasts, that's what's real.